You may have recorded an interview or done some dialogue like this kind of thing and wondered why it doesn't sound quite like a professional recording. Might sound good, might sound fine, but it might not sound like you're expecting it to sound. Well, that's because even if you're using the best equipment, most of what you hear in television and podcasts, radio, talk radio, um, that's all been processed in a way that makes it sound normal. It makes it sound like we're used to hearing it sound in those environments. Because just a mic with a person speaking into it in a well-treated room doesn't give you the sound that you're expecting to hear. So let's take a look at the tools that Resolve gives you. Both the free version, most of this actually is available in the free version, and there's one noise reduction tool in the studio version that we'll just use for comparison. But that's our goal is to recreate that signal chain that normal sound is created with. So here I have an excerpt from an audiobook that I just am about finished editing. The book is Issues in Your Tissues by Denise Labar. Thank you very much, Denise, for letting me use this. More information about her work in the description if you're interested. Here's the excerpt.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
Okay, so that is raw audio. And those of you who have done audio before is like, what? You didn't turn off the refrigerator? I hear this all the time. You don't always have control over those kinds of things. That's what that low end is. It's probably a refrigerator and air conditioning running. It doesn't even need to be in the same room. It's just in the building. The whole building is kind of having that low frequency hum. So we'll get to that in a second. First, I want to take care of that sibilant. There's an S sound in there that's just kind of like stabbing my ears. So we're going to look at that first. Here in Fairlight, which is where we're going to be working most of the time, it's very easy to set up the audio effects, and there's one superpower that this has that the other pages don't have. You can get to these effects on all the other pages, but there's one thing. So in the mixer here, I'm going to hit the plus effects button. I'm going to go to channel and dialog processor. I don't care about all the rest of this stuff. I just want that de-esser, and the de-esser takes care of those ear-splitting hisses. I'm going to turn this down a little bit on the frequency because I listened to it earlier, and that's about where it is. Now, the S spike is right here, so let's have a listen to that.
And integrate all aspects of yourself.
Okay, it is now no longer cutting my head off, and hopefully not yours either. For the rest of this, you're going to want headphones, if you have them. You'll be able to hear some of the subtle differences. If it's in the speaker, some of the noise we're listening to is going to vanish into the noise of your listening environment. But we'll soldier on anyway. So this is a dialogue processing tool, and this is actually kind of a one-stop shop. We could de-rumble if you want, and what that'll do is take out the low end, everything below 115 hertz. So let's have a listen.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
That worked. The rumble from the fridge, I think, is gone, but the low end of her voice is also being affected. So here, have a listen. I'll turn it off and then I'll turn it on.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
So we're not going to use that. We're actually going to use the rest of this stuff. Instead, we're going to leave that on, and we're going to go for the noise reduction tool. So again, in the effects section here, we're going to go to restoration and noise reduction. Now, I did some work on this earlier, different video. We're just going to put this in speech mode and have a listen.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself. The greatest work of your life.
So the noise is still there. I'm going to listen to noise only and give it another pass here and hear what that sounds like. It's also taking out some of her breathing. I don't know if you can hear that exactly here. So I think what we'll do is we'll change the sensitivity and see if that might need to go the other way. Too much. We'll turn the sensitivity back up a little bit. Sounds like a horror film. All right, I'm going to reset this to the defaults, and we'll just leave it there. Because what I want to do is take that noise out, because there's some higher, anyway. We'll take most of the noise out with it that way and have a listen to it again.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
All right, that's good enough for now. It's not perfect though, but we're also not done. We're going to go to the equalizer, which is here on the mixer. You double click on that window and up pops the equalizer. I'm going to turn the sound down. I'm going to turn it off because this is the superpower that the Fairlight page has. If you play the sound, you get a frequency spectrum preview. So this solid line across the center here is what the EQ is doing to the sound, and this shaded area is the sound itself. Now this scale is low frequencies, bass frequencies, to high frequencies, low volume to high volume. So it's this kind of the chart that you're looking at here. And I can tell from looking at this preview, even without listening to it, that there is a lot of low-end muck in this sound that has nothing to do with the voice. Nothing. So let's go ahead and turn it up. I'm going to leave it the sound diminished here so that it's not too annoying for you. We'll only turn it up when we need to critically listen to something. But I am going to turn on the low cut filter and turn it up a little bit to about 100 hertz. We know 115 from earlier is going to start cutting into the low end of the voice. So we'll try 100 and hear how that sounds. We'll turn that up.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
Now that is starting to take out some of the low end of her voice. So I'm going to grab this next frequency and turn it up a little bit. So I'm replacing, in a way, just with the curve here, some of what the other thing was taking out.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
All right, I like it. It sounds full. It sounds intimate. It sounds like a person speaking close to a mic, which she was. It was only about 6-7 inches away. But I think I'm taking a little bit too much low end out, so I'm going to take that down a little bit. As long as the noise is gone and the voice still sounds full.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself. The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects.
All right, I like that. I might play with it a bit more, but for the example, I think that you're getting the point. Now for dynamics processing. Dynamics is in this section of the mixer. Dynamics processing is hard to describe. Basically, it is changing the volume of the sound based on the volume of the sound. So we're going to use a compressor and an expander. A compressor, as the sound gets louder, it will turn it down. The louder it gets, the more it turns it down. An expander is sort of on the other end of the spectrum. As the sound gets quieter, it'll turn it down even more. And what that does is it compresses the important part of the audio, the voice, into a specific range that you can then turn up so that it's as loud as it can be. In this environment where we're just listening to the voice, there's no real reason to do that. But if it was in a movie where there's background sound effects and there's Foley and there's music, that helps the dialogue stay where the audience can hear it. In the case of television, it might be competing with your neighbor's lawnmower or the kids fighting in the next room. So there's lots of reasons to do it that aren't really evident in this example. So we'll just carry on with that caveat. I'm going to turn the compressor on, and that gives us this blue line. This is volume. This is volume going up, and this is how it's changing the volume. So once the volume gets to this level, which is negative 15 dB, it will start turning it down based on how loud it gets. So let's go ahead. I'll dim this. Actually, I'll just turn it off again, and we'll go ahead and play it. So you can see when she's speaking, most of her volume is up here. And when she's not speaking, the volume is down here. You can see that the volume is being turned down by about 1.5 decibels when it gets as loud as it gets. All right. That's pretty subtle compression. We're going to leave it there for the moment, and let's listen to it. You probably won't notice any difference.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
But because we know that it's being turned down 1.5 decibels, we can go to the makeup gain here and turn it up 1.5 decibels.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
Of course, what that does... Oh, my file is moved here off of the... What that does is it also turns up the breath. So listen for the breath now.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
So we want the breath to be there because it sounds natural. It's part of what you're used to hearing when somebody is talking, but we don't want it to be quite so present. So we're going to turn that down with the expander. The expander gives us a line similar to the compressor. Let's mute this again. And as the volume of what's being said falls below that line, we can turn it down some more. So we'll turn the ratio up here to, say, 1.8. And what that'll do is, as the sound gets quieter, it'll turn it down even further. Let's listen to that.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself. The greatest work of your life.
So the breath is still there, and still sounds relatively natural, although there's a little bit of like pumping that doesn't hear. You listen to it again.
The greatest work of your life.
It sounds a little unnatural, so I'm going to turn the attack up and the release up, which will make the compressor, the expander in this case, move a little bit more slowly so that the differences aren't quite so obvious. Let's hear that.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
I turn the range up a little bit. So you see how this drops all the way down? That might be too much. If you use the expansion too much, you lose all background sound altogether. And that doesn't sound natural either. Here, have a listen.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself. The greatest...
You hear how the breath sounds like it's coming out of nowhere?
The greatest work of your life is to
So I'm going to turn the range back down just so that we're dropping the volume of the quieter parts a little bit, but we're not turning it off entirely. If you're doing an audiobook, that's important because it can't be too quiet. If it's digitally quiet, they complain, and it just doesn't sound right to the ear. Now, if you want to bring up something that you've worked on, like you can bring up the equalizer by double-clicking on that. That's easy. The effects here, you have to hover over the name, and then there's this little, controls icon, and then you can bring the effect back up. That one we don't care about. This one we'll have a look at. And now we can go ahead and play our video.
Remember and integrate all aspects of yourself. The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
Okay, that, actually we do care about the de-esser because that's, I'm going to turn that down a little bit more because it's still something that, when we hit the compressor, it made it louder again. So let's hear that.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
Better. Now, for comparison, I'm going to play it through. I'm going to edit this together so you can hear the on and off. Here's on.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
Quite a difference, huh? Now, these tools can also be used to do a lot more. Like the equalizer, you can add presence, you can add depth, you can make horrible mistakes and make it sound terrible. The compressor, the same. You can really make it sound robotic and lose a lot of the human expression that you really want to keep. But these are the tools that you use to go ahead and make a well-recorded dialogue sound like studio dialogue. Now, and that's all the free tools. Let's look at noise reduction. So I'm going to turn off everything here. You can turn things on and off by hitting this little power button that gets, and you can turn off the other effects here, and I've turned off these effects in the little on-off switch in them. And noise reduction is off as well. So again, here's the untreated audio.
The greatest work of your...
Enough of that. Let's go ahead and turn on the voice isolation. And I'm going to put this at 50%. It defaults to 100, so we'll leave it there. Here's what it sounds like at 100%. And you'll hear what I mean about the voice not sounding natural.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
So first of all, that S is back, so I'm going to turn that back on. Sorry about that. So that sounds pretty unnatural. First of all, it's silent, and then the noise reduction is almost like nipping the beginning and end of the word. So let's go ahead and turn that down to 50 and hear how that sounds.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
That's almost doing all of our work for us, but let's go ahead and turn the equalizer back on because I can still hear that background hum.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
All right, we'll go ahead and turn the compressor back on and see how that does with this. Basically, we're just replacing the manual noise reduction with the automatic noise reduction.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
Now, what you have there, either the noise reduction ones, it's actually the EQ and the compressor expander that's doing the lion's share of the work. What you have there is relatively well-treated audio, given that we're starting with good audio. Now, there's a final thing to do. However you have these effects set up, there is one more thing to do, and that is on the bus channel here, we're going to add another effect, dynamics, Fairlight effects, and the limiter. And what the limiter does is it says, hey, if it gets really loud, we're just going to stop it from getting any louder. For the audiobook, it doesn't want to be any louder than negative 3 dB. So we're going to put it at negative 3.1. And now it doesn't matter how loud the sound is coming in, it simply will not go above negative 3.1 decibels. So let's listen to that.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
So you can see that it's never actually hitting the limit. So we can actually turn it up a little bit. Well, let's turn it up by, we're going to go crazy. We'll turn it up by 6 dB. If you're wearing headphones, be careful here. It's not actually going to be that loud, but it's going to sound louder.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects.
All right, enough of that. It doesn't sound natural because the normal changes in volume are getting clipped off. So that's not an effective way to increase volume. That's why we did the compression very carefully earlier. But we can take this to, say, plus 2 dB, and it won't sound that bad.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
You can see here it's just barely getting close. We can probably turn it up another, let's try 2.5.
The greatest work of your life is to remember and integrate all aspects of yourself.
Just touching it there. So if you need more volume, you can add it here if you really want to, but it's better to go back to the compressor in the first instance and do it there. The limiter on the bus track is just to keep it from spiking if you haven't paid attention elsewhere. Anyway, that is a look at the basic tools for treating good dialogue, treating well-recorded dialogue. If you have dialogue that is not well recorded or if it has other issues, these will likely make it worse. So if there's a lot of background sound that the noise reduction won't get rid of, the compressor and expander will both make it louder and then more obvious. when the volume switches around, the noise will switch around with it too. So this is really only for relatively well recorded audio. There are ways to use these tools to help fix audio, and I did a video on that last week. I'll link that if you haven't seen it already. But this is for taking good audio and making it sound like normal studio audio. So that's a little bit of noise reduction if you need it, a de-esser if you need it, the EQ to cut the bottom, or if you have a cheaper mic, sometimes the high end is a little harsh. You can kind of smooth that out too. Then the compressor, the dynamics, the compressor and expander to take the voice from whatever range it's in, put it into what range it needs to be in, and make sure that it's front and center for the listener, no matter what's going on in their listening environment, without making it sound unnatural. That's the trick. Thanks for coming along. Hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.